Hi, Daphne again. As you can see, the textured blanket is nearly complete. All 20 blocks are joined and the 20 stitch garter stitch border is almost complete. Let's find today's featured block, Block R. Block R has an interesting juxtaposition of similar shapes, one small, one large. The dandelion flowers in blue is an echo of the much smaller leaf pattern in leafy rib in the yellow. Here are the 2 pages you need for Block R of the textured sampler blanket. The pattern starts with the scallop stitch. There are 2 extra stitches up the side of the scallop stitch to make it the right width. The 2 extra stitches at the beginning and the end of each row are just matched to whatever stitch you're doing next to it. So in here, there's stocking stitch, but just here, it's reverse stocking stitch, and you match the 2 stitches there and the 2 stitches there to whatever you're doing in that row. Before you commence the scallop stitch, there are 2 rows of stocking stitch just in there before you start. Introduce the new colours with a knit row, followed by 3 more rows of knit. A little bit of garter stitch in the transition. You need to increase 1 stitch in the first row of the dandelion flowers. I have provided these charts to keep you on track with all the rows. This is not because there are short rows involved, it's so that you can keep track with the numbers that you are up to. So for instance here on the leafy rib, when you're back to row 1, you're doing row 13 of the dandelion flowers. Mark it as you go, crossing off each pair of numbers as you do them. I find these charts really useful when I'm knitting with a group of people and we're chatting. The dandelion flowers pattern is finished off with some rows of garter stitch. I don't demonstrate these stitches slowly while putting them together for Block R. If you'd like to see them done slowly and carefully, go to our website and check out 48, 49 and 50, these 3 stitches, where they're done slowly and carefully. Here we are. I've started Block R. I've already done the scallop stitch pattern twice through. Before we start the scallop stitch pattern, there are 2 rows in here of stocking stitch. The pattern actually starts on that bumpy bit there. That would be impossible to join up neatly to another block, so we have 2 rows there, a knit and a purl row, just to make somewhere to join the blocks. Now at the edge of the block we have 2 extra stitches on that side and 2 extra stitches on that side. Often when I add extra stitches I just make them stocking stitches all the way down, but these 2 extra stitches you just join them on to whatever the rest of the row of knitting is doing. So in here you make those 2 extra stitches stocking stitches, but here they're reverse stocking stitch. I've already worked the first 2 rows, a purl row followed by a knit row, which gives us two ridges. At the moment the ridges are straight, but as soon as we do the next few rows they will be pulled up like these ones have been to make the scallop shape. They are pulled up by doing 2 slip stitches. They're not knitted. I'm about to do row 3 and the pattern says knit 6, yarn forward, slip 2, and you repeat it. Knit 6, yarn forward, slip 2. So because we've got 2 extra stitches, it won't be knit 6, it'll be knit 8, slip 2, then knit 6, slip 2. So row 3, knit 8 instead of 6, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now when you slip the 2, the yarn is always carried on the right side of the work. So you bring the yarn forward, slip 2 just straight, so slip 2 purlwise, then you put the yarn to the back of the work and do 6. 1, 2, 5, 6. Right, yarn to the front, slip 2, yarn back, 1, 2, and the 3 and the 4 stitches should be directly on where we slipped them before. So 3, 4, and continue like that. Knitting 6, slipping 2, until you get to the end, and when the last bit will be knit 8, not knit 6. In row 4 it says to purl 6, but we're going to purl 8 to get started. 1, 2, 3, 7, 8. Now we're up to those 2 slipped stitches. You can just see them there. Now the yarn has to go to the back, which is the right side of the work. We slip the 2, then bring the yarn back ready for the purl stitches. Now it is purl 6. Now we're going to slip those 2. So yarn to the back of the work, slip the 2 stitches, bring the yarn forward, and off you go for the next 6. So purl 6, slip 2, purl 6, slip 2 to the end of the row, when at the last one, instead of purl 6, it's purl 8. Row 4 is the same as row 6, and the previous row that we did, row 3, is the same as rows 5 and 7. All the other rows are knit or purl rows, so I won't show you those. There's really only the 2 rows in this pattern. They get repeated to create the scallop. Right, slip those 2. Now this should be 8. 1, 2, 3, 7, 8. Let's have a look and see how we're going. You can already see that's being pulled up there by the slipped stitches. So it's those 2 rows. Rows 3 and 4, they get repeated. All the other rows are knit rows, knit or purl rows. I have just finished row 8. That's the end of that pattern. Now the next 8 rows, rows 9 to 16, are the offset pattern, this one here. Only difference being, at the beginning of the row, instead of having 6 for the pattern plus 2, there's 2 for the pattern plus 2. But I'm not going to do the offset pattern here because it's time to change colour and get on with our 2 new stitches. I have just changed colour, ready for the dandelion flower pattern. Now I'll join the colour for the next one. What I normally do, when it's just a knit row like this, is put the yarn around the previous colour, whoops, and then just knit it in like this. It holds it firm when you come back to the next row. You can only do it, of course, if it's a straight plain knit row, and then later on, when I'm finished, I'll come back and weave the end in. That's what I also do on the sides. I knit them in, catching it with every second stitch, and then weave it back in when I'm finished. There's that tail that I'll weave in later. And now loop these around on the wrong side of the work. And it just keeps everything nice and firm. Here is where I knitted that colour in the previous row. I'll finish this knit row, and then when I'm coming back I'll be doing another knit row, so then I can weave that end in. This is another knit row, so I can weave this blue tail in knitting it together with every second stitch. And I'll knit towards the end of the row. Loop this one around so we don't get a hole. This is 4 rows of garter stitch, 4 rows of just knit for the transition from the scallop stitch to the dandelion flowers in blue and the leafy rib, which will be in yellow. Here are those 2 woven in tails of the yarn there, and 1 woven in tail there. Later on I get a needle and just weave them back in. We are now going to put the leafy rib together with the dandelion flowers. Leafy rib has 6 rows, while dandelion flowers has 18 rows. Dandelion flowers starts with a knit row. They're going to be blue dandelion flowers. Row 1 of leafy rib is knit 1, purl 5, yarn back, slip 1, yarn forward, purl another 5. Yarn back, slip 1, purl 5. And the last one is knit 1. Purl 1, knit 5, purl 1. That's that one we slipped. Knit 5 to the end. Just marking that I have now completed row 2 of leafy rib and row 2 of dandelion flowers. Row 3 for leafy rib and dandelion flowers are exactly the same as row 1 for each pattern. Row 4 is the same as row 2. Row 5 of dandelion flowers. Knit 3, now we're going to make the flower. We go to the second stitch on the left hand needle and we go 4 rows down. So let's stretch that out so you can see. 1, 2, 3, 4. We're going to put the yarn twice around it loosely and draw up the loop. Knit 2. Now we're going to do the same again in the same hole. Yarn around loosely twice and draw it up and knit 2. And we're going to do it for a third time. The third one's a little bit harder to get around. Here we are, that's in loosely and bring it up. There we are. Knit 4. And you keep going. You make the flower, knit 4, make flower, knit 4, till you finish off that section of the knitting, the dandelion flowers. Row 5 of leafy rib. Knit 1, purl 2 together, yarn back, go to the next stitch and go 4 rows down. 1, 2, 3, 4. We did 4 rows down over here on the dandelion stitch as well, but this time we only wrap the yarn around once and draw up the loop. So that's loop 1, knit 1. Now loop 2 is the same, go down into the same hole, yarn around once, draw up the loop, purl 2 together, knit and then slip one. We slipped that one before, remember? You slip this stitch when on the right side of the work, and you purl it when you're on the wrong side, so slip it. Then purl two together, go down 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, draw up the loop, knit 1, make the second loop, loop 2, purl 2 together, and continue to the end. The last stitch will be a knit 1, not slip 1. Row 6 of leafy rib. Row 6 is the same as row 2. Purl 1, knit 5. And repeat. Purl 1, that's that one we slipped on the other side. Knit 5. That's one that was a loop, we knit it, knit, and there's the other loop, second loop, knit it. Purl 1, knit 5, and continue on. Row 6 of the dandelion flowers. Purl all the purl stitches, so I've purled those first 3, and slip all the loops, releasing the second wrap as you go. Now you need to do this carefully. So this next one's a wrap, you can see there. It's best if you pick it up there, right, and then slip it off. Now the next 2 will be purl. That's a bit untidy. Purl, you do need to go carefully here, 1, 2. Now, just make sure you can see what you're releasing. There we are. Slip it and release the wrap. Purl 2. Now just open it up so you can see what you're doing. Slip. Now purl 4. Now just isolate it a bit so you can see. Okay. Slip it off, purl 2, slip it off, purl 2, there it is, and you do that right to the end of the row. Row 7 of the dandelion flowers. Knit 2, now knit 2 together, and it's a loop and a stitch. So that loop's flopping about a bit, but just push it up there. So the first bit you go into is the loop, a loop and a stitch. Knit 1, knit 2 together, a loop and a stitch. Knitting 2 together, a loop and a stitch. Knit 1, knit 2 together, a loop and a stitch. Then knit 3, 1, 2, 3. Now here we are again. There's the loop and the stitch. Continue on. Now I've just done row 7 of the dandelions. That finished off the top of the petals, and now we're up to that was row 7 of the dandelion. We're now up to row 1 again of the leafy rib. This is where the charts are handy. I've now finished row 6 of the leafy rib and row 12 of the dandelion stitch. Now for the leafy rib, that's twice through the pattern, but for the dandelion stitch we're not finished it yet. Row 13 of the dandelion stitch will begin the new dandelion flowers. They won't be in line with these ones, they'll be offset. So they'll start in the centre there, there and there. I won't show you the knitting for these because it's the same as making these flowers. They just offset. Instead of continuing with another row of dandelion flowers, we finish with a few rows of garter stitch. A nice horizontal ending to the block. I like the way the straight angular loops of the dandelion flowers in blue and the leafy rib pattern in yellow contrast with the bold loops of the scallop stitch tiles across the bottom of this block. Toodaloo!
Hi, I'm Ferg, Daphne's husband. Here are the steps to get your free download of Daphne's Textured Sampler ebook. The first step is send an email to knitwithdaphne@gmail.com and include the subject free download. There is no need for any content in the email, and then send the email. You will receive an automatic response to your email that includes the link to access Google Cloud. When you click the link, the Knit with Daphne folder with all the downloadable patterns will open. Double-click the textured sampler blanket to open and download the ebook. Enjoy knitting the textured sampler blanket.